That's exactly what I did on my channel with Downright Nerdy Podcast and Bored and Annoyed Podcast. And there's 4 episodes on my channel about that. And every time we ended the episode, we were talking for 2 more hours after that episode.
I'm going to cut out your shameless plug, Andy, in my edit.
Hey, how's it going, guys? We are not live today. Sorry about that. This idiot had to work. Apologies, but hey, we're here in premiere mode, so I'm sure Chris Barrett and some other people are hanging out. So shout out to you guys. Thank you for joining us in the premiere. But oh my God, look at the comb is stuck. It's so getting so majestic and thick. Andy, how's the beard?
Almost like it's powered by some evil source. This thing just keeps going.
Yeah, it looks like it might be some sort of weird gateway to another dimension. But Drew, how's your beard?
I'm not Drew. I'm Norton Sinclair. God damn it! My beard's doing all right.
Yeah, mine is. It's there. But anyway, we're talking Gideon Falls. We actually had one poll out of the last month of insanity and crises and crisis trilogies, and I know Andy and Drew, you guys got to be very happy with the nice change of pace on Gideon Falls. I won't get too much into hot dog grandstanding. I want to know what you guys thought of Gideon Falls. So, Andy, you've been a big proponent of getting this on Modern Men. I want to hear what Gideon Falls means to you.
Oh, man. You're talking Twin Peaks and X-Files clashing, meeting, coming together in a book that delivers a style of storytelling that it was just absolutely fantastic, in my opinion. A book that I am devoutly in love with, and unfortunately is almost over with, but dude, this has been on my pull list since day one. I've been paying attention to this, and it dropped every month. It was just waiting, like sweating bullets. Can't wait for this book, and every time I was done with it, I couldn't wait for that next book to come out.
What about you, Drew? I know you've talked a lot about getting this on Modern Men, and luckily it finally won a pull. So have you been on this since day one as well?
I have. I actually saw the preview for this book and decided I definitely need to have it. A big fan of Lemire and Sorrentino on Old Man Logan, which they did after Secret Wars and the all new, all different Marvel or Marvel Now or whatever the hell they were calling it. I read their Green Arrow as well, which I very much enjoyed. I like the way that these two guys tell a story together. Now, I've kind of been... Andy has kind of been more pushing for this to get on the show more than I have. I've kind of poo-pooed that idea over and over again, and for a reason that I think that we all agree on upon rereading this, and Carson, you reading it the first time. I know we had some conversations on the Discord server about that today. Shout out to the Discord server. Be sure to sign up for the Discord server. There's going to be a link in the description of this video. Find it and talk comics with us there. But my whole deal was that I didn't feel like one volume of this story had nearly enough meat on its bones to foster a conversation over the course of a half hour to an hour about the story. And I think that Andy urged you to read more than that first volume, Carson. And if I'm correct, I think that you did. And I think that that behooves us all in this conversation about Gideon Falls.
I wish I could say I was with you guys and I was getting this since day one and all that stuff. I actually bought the first issue. I had it on some sort of Midtown Comics pre-order back when I was getting my stuff from Midtown for a minute. And I just like, oh, cool, a Jock cover. I like Jock. Oh, Jeff Lemire, he's great. I've heard good things. So I got an issue 1. I might have like a couple copies of issue 1. I don't know. But I know I have at least 1 copy in the collection. And I read it, and I'll be honest, it didn't do that much for me. I've tried once to read this, so I decided to try a second time. I was going to read way in advance because I have a lot of reading projects going on. We're filming this in the month of October, of course. And I got another false start on it. I read like a couple issues in, and I just kind of lost interest last week. And I was just like, I got to get this read sometime. I got to get this read. And then here I am. It was Monday, about couple hours before it was time to film this. I'm like, all right, there's no choice now. I'm part of Modern Men. I got to read everything that they tell us to read for Modern Men. So it's probably like Andy, you reading all the crises is just like trying to like It was a difficult time. So I finally got through issue 2, issue 3, and I just kept checking my phone, checking my, time and everything on that volume 1. And I finally got through it, got to the end. I'm like, okay, that wasn't that bad. But I told the guys they're going to want to talk about the next volume, and I got to read the next volume. That's when I stopped checking my watch, checking time. Next thing I knew, I was through that. I'm like, oh, it's already over. Oh, cool. I'll go read the next one. And then that thing, like, I didn't even realize when the issues were up until it told me to. And then I'm like, okay, I hope they have the 4th one on Hoopla. And then they did. And then I got through that one, and I'm just like, that's it. Oh my God. So it was super weird. It's been a very long time. So it's probably since Saga that I've had a reading experience like this, where the first trade, I had to really force myself to get through. But once you get past that hurdle, you're wanting to read the whole thing as quick as you can. I wanted to talk to Drew again, because you mentioned right before we started recording about how you don't think this is the best binge read because it doesn't really allow you to think about the mystery once it's presented to you. You're basically just reading as fast as you can to get to the solution. So, Drew, I want to hear you talk about why you think this is a good monthly title.
The thing I liked about this title when it came out monthly is I was kind of opposite of you when I read the first issue. I was like, this is weird. This is moody. It's giving me everything I kind of really want out of a Sorrentino book of art. And Lemire has this way with characters where they're just very relatable and very real. And something about the mystery just kept driving me to find out more about it. So I reread the entire series so far. I have issue 25 was the last one that I read. I read basically this entire series up to almost the finale and really enjoyed it. When I went back and reread volume 1, I started to realize that the pace that I wasn't so much enjoying in the binge was better monthly. It was better with a slow drip of this mystery to really draw you into these characters. So when they had their reveals in issue 3 and issue 4, when Dr. Zhu, we'll talk about this, sees the Black Barn for the first time, it has weight, it has meaning, where if it just happened in issue 1 and it was all crammed into one issue, it would have lacked a lot of that weight. And I think that by the time, I think I would like to liken this story to Lost, the TV show Lost, because TV show Lost was about a paradox, a time paradox, right? That's the whole thing. Is spoiler alert. If you're just watching about a plane crash and mystery sounds in the jungle, you're nowhere near where it's at. All right. And it took 3 good seasons of character building for them to get to the point of saying, nope, we're time traveling. And at that point, you were so hooked to these characters that you didn't care where the story went. You were just going to follow it to the end. And I think that this kind of has that same type of setup, slow burn, little bit of information, little bit of information, little bit of information. Now we're going to blow your mind and you can't stop reading this. I kind of think that, maybe the first volume could have been 2 oversized quarterly issues. It would still need to be more than just 2 issues to get in all that story, but it could have been paced a little bit better. I don't think that binging it gives you the same kind of feeling that waiting for that monthly dose of Gideon Falls gave me. I know for one, Comics Misexplained, huge fan of Gideon Falls, and we've had this conversation over and over again about how it was that slow drip of this tasty beverage that made you thirsty for more. And that's kind of the way that it was all set up.
You talk a little bit about the pacing, and I do agree that the pacing does struggle a little bit in the first volume, but what the first volume delivers that I think is kind of overlooked a little bit is a style of storytelling you don't get in a lot of modern books. The visual aspect. This book read fantastically month to month as single issues, in my opinion. It was a slow build, but you were rewarded with some character building, and there's great rewards at the end of volume 1 for me. Going into volume 2, I came around in the second. This is my 5th read through of the book, actually. This time around, I bought all the volumes on Comixology and sat down and I read them from a binge reading standpoint. This book reads It's displayed fantastically well digitally. Get 100% you go to full screen mode, go to 2 pages, and you get wowed with some amazing panels and some amazing storytelling styling with the way they utilize the panels, the way they utilize the dialogue, and the fantastic delivery on art. When I first picked up this book, when it came out off the shelf, and I opened those first couple of pages, like, oh man, the art style isn't kind of my thing. But what it does is it builds that world for me, and I am devoutly in love with this art style in this story and the way it's being utilized. Granted, I think binge reading it, sitting down volume to volume, does kind of hurt a little bit. But when you sit down and you open up and get those double page spreads, the storytelling style becomes more apparent. That's where I feel like I draw more reward from the book in a volume to volume read, is just the way it's laid out, the way it's delivered to you. And that kind of brings that pacing up a little bit more for me. But yeah, it's one of those things where you don't get that cliffhanger feeling every month like you did when the issues first came out.
It's just kind of funny because I was actually going to make the point that I think this is a phenomenal binge reading comic. Well, obviously, I read 4 volumes of it this afternoon, and I just could not picture, especially that first volume, trying to collect it monthly and reading it monthly and not getting frustrated for that 1 month, or I don't know if it's how consistent the release schedule has been, but I just couldn't picture waiting more than a month in between issues. Now, in between volumes, of course, I think they have pretty decent cutoffs for each of the volumes. I think Lemire's definitely structured this in that newer trade style format to perfection, because where the cliffhanger, the issue or volume 4 leaves off is excellent. That makes me want to read. I'm guessing there's going to be a final 5th volume where it just collects everything else that's going to come out.
Yeah, and the last issue that comes out in December, that oversized issue, is actually going to be its own volume, releasing in April 2021 as well.
Hopefully they'll be throwing some more stuff in there than just that final issue. Hopefully we'll get some, maybe some director's cut style scripts, or some pinups, or some more Sorrentino art, or hopefully I'm just waiting for an omnibus size hardcover for the whole deal, so I can just kind of read through it all in one sitting. I think that's probably gonna trump the whole situation of volume to volume or issue to issue overall. And kind of being able to sit down and then take the whole thing might kind of work for me. Carson, though, I think that we do have to recognize that you had issues with the pacing. I had issues with the pacing. Andy, how did you feel about did you have issues with the pacing as well? Because I know that one of the members of our Discord had issues with the pacing.
At first, month to month, while sitting and reading the individual book, no. But then you go back a month later, I found myself rereading the prior month's issue every time. So the pacing of the release of the book hurt. The pacing of the storytelling becomes more apparent to me when I sit down and I binge read it digitally. Because in the moment when I'm getting each individual issue, I was hooked. I was really hooked. This was like Twin Peaks meets X-Files, and it's just the style of storytelling and the way it's delivered for me won me over wholeheartedly. So my issues with pacing sound quite a bit different than a lot of others, but I found value in places where others found a little less value maybe, and they were more apparent in the pacing, or the issues they had were more apparent in the pacing. But I wouldn't even call them issues really, where I feel like the pacing is something to nitpick, because it's all in the eye of the beholder, really.
I think going back and rereading the first volume for me made me think to myself, oh, maybe this isn't as good as I remember it being. Yeah, maybe Carson's not going to like this. Me and Andy are going to get shit on, because Carson's going to be like, what the hell did you make me read? We're going to be like, see, that's what you get for all those crises. I think that point, there are absolutely 2 glaring reviews from the same reader on Discord that I'd like to share with you guys right now. And this is from Scotty Evans. So this is not my genre at all, but Gideon Falls starts out slow as fuck. I had to keep rereading until volume 3 for this to evolve to anything worthwhile. Why would anybody read beyond issue 2? I don't know. Do your thing, I guess. I only muscled through because Andy asked us to commit through volume 3, and that journey was like getting my fingernails pulled off. I'd never have read 11 months of worth of books to allow it to get decent. This title would have been dropped after issue 1 for me. It turned out to be okay in volume 3, but it took way too long. 11 freaking issues to get there. Boo. Sorry to those that like this, but it's just my opinion, not yours. Volume 1 gets a 0.5 total shit. It rebounds by the time volume 3 gets going, but I'm still salty, so I give it an unsavory 6.5 for volume 1 through 3. As a whole, still salty. Fine. It's realistically a 7.5 for the 3 volumes as a whole. Then he then comes back mere hours later, right? After saying how terrible it fucking was and how he would never read a book for 11 issues to wait for it to get good. Then he says, yeah, that's probably a little harsh, and it reads worse than intended. I have read through issue number 20 now, and I do like the story as a whole. Well, it took you that long to get through 3 volumes. Now you're going to read issue 20? He goes on to say, it's great, actually. When we finally get around to it, I didn't like the early pacing at all. Agreed. We went from a death crawl at the beginning to a nice pace for issues 4 and 5. Then for some reason, we put the lead suit back on for another 3 to 4 issues. Halfway through issue 10, the Speed Force was accessed, and the next 2 to 3 issues were almost too much too fast. It did settle down, and I found a nice groove between issues 12 and 13 that I finally acclimated. As a monthly reader, this would have been a one and done. It's just way too slow. I didn't dig the characters, and the art was not my thing. I have grown to appreciate the art as it complements and fits the mood of the story. Reading it as a whole is totally the way to go, and getting the tip from ComicManAndy to commit through volume 3 was imperative. I stand by my original score.
So I value that. I value Scott's opinion wholeheartedly. I value it. His opinion is very valuable. But where he found some challenges at the beginning, I found that Lemire was steering me to move slower and pay more attention to detail to the panels and to the art and to the way the story is being delivered. There's lots of hidden treasures in the story. I'm not going to spoil anything, but when you first read it, you need to go back and reread it again and reread it again. And what happens is you start to discover the bits and pieces where he paces the story specifically for that reason to go slow. He wants you to go slow and pay attention to detail for a reason. And when you start doing that and kind of opening your mind a little bit, you start making connections. You start being led down the stylized storytelling path that he wants you to go down. And then things start opening up and you really start getting delivered some awesome value in hidden bits and pieces here and there. I'm not going to spoil it. It's fantastic at what that style of storytelling is doing and pulling people to one area or over to the other, kind of distancing people on opinions, and that's part of it too. But I'm really glad that he took the time to make those comments and share that opinion, because that's making for some awesome discussion in Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to talk about some of the David Lynch comparisons here, because I know you guys aren't huge Twin Peaks guys, and I do enjoy me some Twin Peaks. And like you said, Andy, some X-Files too. And I drew that parallel and then read what you read later about Twin Peaks meeting X-Files. So I always kind of enjoy in David Lynch type stuff where his characters like have these traits that they're odd traits, but then they don't really explain them at all. And I think, when I meet Norton Sinclair for the first time, or whatever you want to call Norton Sinclair, like what his real name, or if that is his real name, that's up for discussion too. He's like wearing a mask. He's digging through garbage. He's just off kilter. And that does remind me of a lot of David Lynch characters, where, especially once you pay that visit in Twin Peaks, there's just a lot of characters that are just weird for no reason. They have these human traits. And in most TV shows, especially in 1990, you would probably get an explanation for why they're that way. Well, when you're dealing with David Lynch, he's not going to give you any explanation. You just kind of have to roll with it and accept that character for what it is. And I think there's a lot of that style of characterization here in Gideon Falls. And then to go the X-Files comparison, where I drew that, and I'm guessing I'm not alone in this, because other people online have made that connection, is with Clara, the sheriff of one of the Gideon Falls is I guess. I thought she was just a female Fox Mulder the whole time for me. She was, You know, she wasn't a believer in faith. She lost her sibling when she was young, and her mission was to figure out why she lost her brother, basically. Just like Fox Mulder lost his sister Samantha in the X-Files, he became an FBI agent, an officer of the law, to try to figure out what mystery robbed him of his family, basically. So I definitely enjoyed that comparison as well. So we've talked almost 20 minutes here, and we haven't even really covered the story at all yet. So I guess in terms of the actual story, Andy, what really drew you in for this story? Did you have a certain character you liked?
No, it's the previews catalog when this first hit and kind of described it as being a horror thriller. I recognized on the market at the time there wasn't a lot on the market in that kind of avenue worth reading. And you guys really turned me on to Jeff Lemire, Black Hammer, some of the other stuff that he's done. I'm like, really got to check this out. Jeff Lemire is one of my premier top 5 writers that I check out everything they do all the time. So that led me to that story. You guys and the previews description of the book had it on my pull list because of that. And yeah, I couldn't look back after that. Notice the covers, the stylized art. I'm telling you guys, look back at all the covers. Everybody watching and listening tonight, all the different covers play a role. The artwork on those covers have tidbits for the story that if you pay attention to, you're going to start making connections, and you're going to start finding yourself going down that rabbit hole. If you like theorizing about some of the stuff and you like horror and you like thriller stuff, you're going to find yourself going down the rabbit hole for hours with your friends.
I love what you said about the covers there, because they're all, if you look at them, they're all that profile of the face of one of the characters. I think that the medium that face is formed out of informs you about what's going to be happening in that issue, and also sets the mood for each issue as well. I love the fact that they've gone with something kind of uniform that spans the entire series at this point. Not to mention that they have some awesome variant covers out there as well that are totally worth picking up. But the main A covers do kind of tell the story along the way.
Well, yeah, they give location secrets on there. They give secrets about the characters even as well. And there's deeper plot line secrets that are hidden in the cover art as well that can be dug through, and really diving deep into that kind of theory and aspect.
As far as like a horror suspense thriller book, that's not normally the kind of thing I sign up for. Lemire was definitely the key to making this a palatable choice for me. Sorrentino goes the extra mile and puts it over the top. The art in this book is absolutely phenomenal, but when it comes to the story, it's not normally something that I would gravitate towards.
Yeah, and I was going to talk about the art next with Sorrentino, because I've read a little bit of Andrew Sorrentino and enjoyed the art, but in this one, this is by far Andrew Sorrentino's best art, in my opinion. I absolutely loved some of the panel work. It went very Mike Allred there for a little bit, which I always enjoy. I think my favorite one is where Dr. Zhu, I believe, was looking into the mirror, and she actually sees our main character, Norton, and somehow she can see what's going on with him. And then there's like this spiral of a 2-page splash panel, and you kind of have to that's why it was great reading it digitally. You can zoom in and look at what's going on in each of their situations. And there's just a lot to absorb there in just one splash panel, basically. So you kind of see what's going on with him. You get to see her getting ready to smash the mirror, and then it inverts into this other helix, and just a lot of crazy stuff there.
That's a major hint in the story too.
It is, absolutely.
When you get done reading it and go back, that's one of those very rewarding. It's that style of storytelling they're able to bring there. That's a major hint for the story.
And you said that was kind of a draw for you reading it digitally. I think that within the medium of the standard comic book, the way that you flip through these pages and the way that things are revealed to you as you flip through pages, the way that giant pieces of the story are revealed before you read any of the words on the page, is something that I found to be more enjoyable reading with actual books throughout. Now, I really enjoyed the story, and it was cool to be able to zoom in on some of the panels because I definitely reread this digitally. But I do remember the feelings that you get when you get giant, beautiful splash pages that tell their own story before you even look at any of the dialogue or the exposition that's being provided via the words. So that's another way to look at it. I think that it speaks in the language of comic books in a way that a lot of books don't.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that scene really quick that Carson brought up where she looks in the mirror, she sees the barn, and then she sees the other main character, that parallel kind of aspect. You look at the way the blocks, the panels are laid out, they're very structured as that scene begins. And then as she comes to realization, sees that barn, they kind of start tilting, and there's more and more red involved. And it's like there's that aspect of suspense kind of added. And the next thing you know, those panels are actually spun 90 degrees and contorted, and her world's falling apart.
And if we're going to talk about the art, you really can't discount Dave Stewart's color palette, which is so muted but in different ways. I'm going to go ahead and throw a big spoiler out there for you. There are multiple realities in this book. Okay. It is a story about a Nikola Tesla type allegory, breaking reality with his special machine. And when he does that, all hell breaks loose. And there's so many different ways that the story expands from that. But all of the different worlds have a muted color palette that is just slightly different from the other worlds. So if you're paying attention, you know which world you're in based on the way that it looks, but each has the same kind of style where this splash of bright red is utilized to highlight things in a like a detective mode type way sometimes, to just show you what you should be looking at on these big, beautiful, confusing splash pages, and to really accentuate the violence and the gore, which is not really the highlight of this book. But I think with this kind of less is more approach to that visceral visual storytelling, the color palette is just absolutely phenomenal. Dave Stewart kills it in this book.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I do like how when they start to, I feel like pretty early on, maybe it's because it was kind of spoiled for me. They do have a lot of those hints that there are two universes, and especially like that final stinger at the end of the first volume, which that's what made me want to keep reading, is where you see two of our main characters, Dr. Zoo and I keep forgetting his name. Norton, yeah, they're just there at the end, and then it says, welcome to Gideon Falls. Like, oh, wait a minute, this is also Gideon Falls. And then I just like the subtle other hints they have where they're finally getting ready to intersect the dimensions, and both panels are just sideways like a mirror reflecting onto itself, just with the two characters we've been following up until that point. But yeah, I dig that type of stuff for sure.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this right now, halfway into the show now, buckle up. Everybody watching, reading that is mildly interested or fully interested or just a little bit, get through those first 3 volumes and buckle the hell up, because Volume 5 is almost done. One more issue from Volume 5. Now, let me tell you what, those 4 issues that just came out of Volume 5 recently, that story goes full tilt and delivers.
Yeah, and I think the biggest selling point to keep me want to keep reading was the Bishop storyline. So I can't remember if it was Volume 2 or early Volume 3. They kind of just almost dedicate half a volume to telling the Bishop side of things, because the pastor we're following, he keeps alluding to this Bishop. It's almost kind of like Agent Cooper talking to Diane in Twin Peaks for a little bit. There's just this character he's talking to on the phone, but you never really see or get to know the character at all. And then all of a sudden, boom, here's this Bishop, and you kind of get his story on why he knows everything, why he's putting people in places that, they don't know why they're in, but only he does. And that's where like it really gets turned on its head for me, because he's almost like also Desmond Hume from Lost, to go back to your Lost analogy, Drew. Like once that character is introduced, that's where you get how the scope of the true weirdness here, because at first I thought it was going to be like, okay, it's about 2 mirror universes having intersect and all that stuff. Like, then the scope just gets bigger after that. They don't even hold back. Like within the next couple issues, like, oh, you thought there were only 2 Gideon Falls, huh? Like, well, look at this one double-page splash panel with all these echoes of other Gideon Falls, and going from there. Then that's where you're like pinching and zooming in on your iPad and like, oh, what? Oh, there's like a big city one, and there's one that looks like it's out of They Live or something, and then there's another one that's in the Old West, and then there's this weird one that's all just, Greenland and stuff like that, which that actually becomes very important. But I also like it because you get to know each of these universes as well. It's not just like an Easter egg or anything like that. Those universes you see when you pinch and zoom on those panels, you're going to get to visit those, and I really enjoy that.
I really enjoyed, like you said, the Bishop is kind of that Desmond Hume character, where, Desmond in Lost, he was like this weird dude hanging in a hatch you didn't find out about until season 2, episode 1. And then you didn't see him again until the finale of season 2. And then he becomes the crux of the entire narrative in a way that is really, really important, and you couldn't divorce him from the whole deal. And I think that the Bishop shows up like this, Inspector Gadget villain, just kind of in the shadows on the phone. You don't see him, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, this is his story pretty much more than it's anybody else's. And I really enjoyed that. I think it was a really nice twist. I think that this story has a way of twisting things ever so slightly to subvert your expectations and make you really appreciate the answers to the mysteries as they come up. It's not your normal A plus B equals C. It's A plus B equals CX. Well, what is X? And I think that that's a fun way of really subverting the expectations and giving the audience something that they didn't know that they wanted. I think Lemire's great at that.
Now, Andy, I wanted to ask you, because we've been reading a lot of DC Crises and that stuff lately. I'm sure those worlds are pretty confusing and all that insanity. But how blown was your mind when not only are we talking about multiple universes and that stuff, they introduced the idea of time travel on top of this?
Yeah. You want to talk about full mental meltdown. And that's why, like I was saying, this is like my 5th read through of the book. I read through it the first couple of times on my own just to try to grasp everything, which is why I find a tremendous amount of value in that pacing issue. That pacing of the book forces me to slow down and pay more attention so that I start to gather and absorb a little bit better. So that second read through, things were picking up a little bit better. But yeah, when you throw that aspect of multi-dimension and then time travel into it, you're just like, I can't keep track of this. Holy hell, what's going on? They do that for a reason. They really do. And even on a 5th read through, I still kind of feel that suspense. I really do.
I think that they kind of achieve a lot more in their approach to like a multiverse and their approach to time travel than a lot of big 2 giant superhero stories do, because they're not concerned with paying attention to a long-running continuity or explaining everything to a readership that might not be ready for that kind of storytelling. And you say what you want about stories like crises, whatever you call them. Superman and Batman stories are for children, and when you try to make them more mature, you get some really great storytelling, but you also have some wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff that's just kind of thrown in there to be like, well, this is how everything works out with these characters that you've known forever. I think Lemire has the ability to create these characters and explore this world without having that holding him back, without having to explain, well, where's Robin? Oh yeah. And it's like, oh, well, why are there 3 Supermen? Like, well, no, there's this one guy, and then there's another guy that looks like him with a steampunk arm in another universe. Like that. It's kind of an easier digestion for me than something as big and bold as Crisis.
Yeah, I feel like I could go back and reread Crisis 10 times and still not have a very solid grasp on Crisis, but after a couple of rereads through this, I was feeling like I was getting more momentum and gaining more of a foothold into the understanding of what's going on.
It's just more mature storytelling comes from a more mature space.
And I think that's why it was great we got that Bishop storyline, because you get to visit through his eyes, which he's just as confused as we would be. It starts off, it's like in the late 1800s, and they're talking about the Black Barn in the 1800s and going after it then. And then that's when something really catastrophic happens. And not only is he in a different universe, he's in a different timeline. So he starts drawing his map out, and then that's where you kind of start to see this little bit of a map, and then he eventually gets to meet. I think this is what the most mind-melting part for me. You get to see Dr. Zoo when she's much older in a different universe, wearing the mask that she wasn't even wearing yet. It was just like, wow. And then you get to see her present the more full realized version of the map, and it's a pretty crazy experience. And I think it's kind of funny, Andy. Before this, we were searching just so we'd have the character names for this episode and stuff. There's not a lot of information on Gideon Falls online right now. And I feel like the more years pass, once this wraps up, the years will pass. The internet will get more of a hold on it. And I think eventually we're going to see maps and charts and all kinds of other insane things and fun little Reddit articles on Gideon Falls for sure.
It's amazing at how slow the uptake this book has been for everybody out there that likes this mature reading style and likes comic books in general, and even the genre. The use of negative space in this book alone should have a ton of people just in an uproar talking about how fantastic the artwork is and the delivery. Because I'm pouring through volume 2 again and looking at it, and it's like we haven't even talked about that use of negative space very much yet. Because look at the negative space covers on Marvel books and other stuff that has been selling so well and has been such a huge hype point.
And I do even like the backgrounds of the comic too, because obviously usually when you draw on a comic, you have your panels and then your white space or black space in the background, whatever the artist usually feels like using. But sometimes in this, whenever they go into telling a story, like I can't remember if it was Clara or her brother, which we haven't even gotten into that yet. I don't even know if we need to at this point. But one of them starts telling a story about this haunting moment that happened to them in their childhood. And on one page, you start to see like it turns black from white to black, and then there's like red drawings of like teddy bears and childhood stuff. And then the next page, it's just fully realized in the background as you keep reading into this memory this character's reliving. So there's a lot of stuff like that I actually had to go back and forth to realize what I was seeing.
Yeah, look, there's a major reason why Norton Sinclair wears a mask. You get rewarded with that understanding. There's a double reason why you find Dr. Yu later on, that other timeline where she's much older, and all of the villagers wear a mask. When you understand and realize why they're all doing that, you're like, oh my God, that makes so much sense now. The deliveries are there. The value's there.
Yeah, I can't wait to find that out for sure, because that's been my main question after all this insanity. It's just like, when are we going to find out why they're wearing the mask? And I'm sure it has to do something with that one world where, you can't even drink the water, and I'm sure the air quality, or maybe I'm completely wrong. I'm going to find out eventually, though.
Let's just put it that way. The four issues that just have been coming out that are building on volume 5 answer a lot of questions and deliver the most value yet.
You also don't want them cockroaches in your mouth.
No.
Look, if you think this book might not be for you, parallel worlds, time travel, religious allegories, Nikola Tesla opening up a multiverse and finding the devil there, and cockroaches, many cockroaches. This book has all the cockroaches you could ever want.
You just really want to use those bumpers from Friday, don't you?
It's larva time indeed.
Oh man, I guess we can start talking some final thoughts here on Gideon Falls. So, Andy, are you going to read this for a 6th time?
Not only am I going to read it for a 6th time, but I'm definitely going to finish getting the other trades as they come out, and I'll buy all of them digitally as well. I'm going to own it digitally. I'm going to own it in trade paperback form. I'm also going to pre-order that deluxe hardcover omnibus that comes out for the bookshelf, because I want to absorb this content, or I want to absorb this story in all forms of content.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like, I don't know if they've done like the big image hardcover of this yet, or if they're just waiting for Lemire and Sorrentino to get their 2 cents in, but I got to get that when it comes out.
Yeah, last Halloween they actually delivered a special edition hardcover around Halloween time that had the issues in there. That's pretty hard to find, and it was like a $40 or $50 book at my LCS when it came out. It was really limited. I wanted to buy that for this reread, but I wasn't able to find it in time.
I'd like to have this in like a treasury edition where you really get that art in a big format. I did enjoy reading it on my large computer screen and seeing the art up close and seeing the art big. But then again, I really enjoyed the tactile experience of turning the page and getting to take in all of that splash before I started delving into what happened to actually be in the narrative via the page. So I think that's definitely, this is something that you can enjoy in many different formats. And you were saying there's not a lot online about this. That is going to change because this is going to be a TV show. It's been optioned. They are working hard on it. Names like Bad Robot and Justin Lin are attached to this. There are some real horror pedigree going into this. There's some real genre pedigree going into this TV show or streaming show. Who knows where it's going to end up? But I'm super excited to see this kind of realized in kind of a David Lynch storytelling mode via episodic television. I think it's going to be great.
I struggle at trying to decide of which way they're going to go with this that delivers it better for me, because I think this would make an absolutely fantastic 2-hour-long movie. But I think you're right. I think delivering it via the show and leaving those excellent cliffhangers and waiting is going to have people pining for that next episode. And I feel like it's going to binge watch really well in the end once you've been a part of that episodic release. You know what I mean?
I think that like with the popularity of shows on HBO, like The Outsider, like Watchmen, like on HBO Max, Raised by Wolves, people are ready for genre storytelling in a way that subverts their expectations, in a way that, like, this book for me, by the time you get to the end of volume 1, you really don't even know what this is about yet. You kind of just get the fact that it's volume 1's cliffhanger and big reveal is basically like, this is bigger than you thought it was, but you still don't know what it is yet. Not until the middle of volume 2, towards the end of volume 2, do you even really know what this story is, and it is not what you expected it to be, and it's still very satisfying at the same time.
Yeah, I'm just trying to picture how a series like this would work. I feel like it would almost have to be that HBO style format where it's just a 10-episode series, kind of like Watchmen was. And I mean, especially if it's going to end here in a little bit, there probably won't go too much past one series or one season.
They could probably do like 3 seasons, kind of in the way that Westworld worked, where you get like a setup season, then you get like an exposition season, and then you get the holy shit, we're on a roller coaster season.
Yeah, agreed. At a minimum, I think 3. I think there's too much here to really try to nail down in one season. I think they would underservice the story big time if they try to do one 10-episode series.
Honestly, though, I think the creators would have to go into it saying, we need 3 seasons if we're going to do this at all. And I think that they would have to deal with the fact of the reviews for the first 3-4 episodes being like, what's going on here? What is this?
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, I think that kind of pacing where you give it a 3-season, 30 episodes, because I mean, we're getting 28 issues and the last one's double size. 30 episodes is pretty solid. I think that when you look at, you might be able to truncate that a little bit, maybe 8-episode seasons. But I think those beginning, middle, end style storytelling is kind of what you need out of this, especially knowing that we're in the end game right now and how much I'm enjoying the back end of this story. I would really hope that they take the time to get that right.
Yeah, I just like the first episode has to end with the first trade reveal. Like that last scene before they fade to black almost has to be "Welcome to Gideon Falls," that big city sign. So that's the whole first volume, though.
I think you can I think you can surgically break up that first volume and deliver it in a way on screen that still plays the roles that they need it to, and yet doesn't crunch one entire volume into an episode.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff with Father Fred in the first volume that they could use to kind of to push that reveal off. Yeah. Where you, like I said, with Lost, you want to make people care about these characters before you let them know that they're in for a multiversal journey into the heart of evil.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would definitely hope that at least the first season would focus on the main relationships formed here between, Clara and the father, and then you have Dr. Sutton introduced, and then of course, Dr. Zoo, and what is revealed later to be the brother from another universe. So all that insanity right there. But yeah, absolutely, I would love to see a series of this. I don't know if I want it. I just hope they don't try to make it too David Lynch, because that would be my fear. I guess it depends, who's making it. My last question about the series part of it: do you guys have any odd casting requests for this? Is there anybody you could picture, like Hollywood actor wise, playing any of these parts?
I haven't gotten that too far into it, but Father Wilfred, Bruce Willis, maybe.
That is actually a really good idea. I was just thinking the exact same thing. Just a grizzled old drunk priest.
Yeah.
What's funny? For some reason, and we've talked about this before, how, when you're reading comics, you have certain weird voices in your head for whatever reason. For some reason, when I was reading Father Wilfred, the actor whose voice was in my head narrating it was Clark Gregg. Don't know why. Can't explain it. So
that actually might be good too.
Yeah, I think would be a great father in this.
I can't remember the damn guy's name. He was the miner on Deadwood. He's in everything.
Yeah.
He just has that voice that I think would be great for the father, for the Dr. Sutton.
I think for Clara, Katie Sackhoff would be a fantastic choice.
Yeah, actually, I agree with that one. That would be great, actually. But what was that one show she was on where she was a cop? I can't even remember.
Longmire,
that's it. Yeah, great choice right there. Yeah, Longmire, Katie Sackhoff. I could get behind that one all day. Her and Clark Gregg just going around looking for black barns. Make that a series right now. That sounds great.
You give me goosebumps.
All right,
you just need to get somebody iconic to play the bishop. Somebody that you would not expect, like Giancarlo Esposito would be great as the bishop.
For some reason in my head, I see. Oh man, I can't think of it right now. Dang it.
You got a guy you could either, like an old guy you could make look young, or a
young guy you can make old. Yeah,
Anthony Hopkins. That's it. I think of Anthony Hopkins when I think of the bishop.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
That would track too. They did that good de-aging CG on him for Westworld as well. So
that's true.
Or you can even get just different actors to play the different aged character. But I think that's
what I really
you kind of lose a little bit that way.
That's what I really like about storytelling and comic books and the medium right now is you get a lot of fantastic shows with a lot of unknown up-and-comers that blow you away sometimes.
Yeah. I think Pedro Pascal would be great in any of these roles. Are you Norton Sinclair? Yes, this is the way.
Well, before we get into final rankings, I do have one last question. Does Norton Sinclair have a beard, or is it just like a black growth on his face? Sometimes he didn't have that beard.
He had the beard and he had the handlebar mustache.
Well, the one Norton Sinclair had the mustache.
Oh my god!
Oh no! You're talking about Daniel Norton.
Yes.
Yeah, Danny Nortonson. He's
what
would be great as him? Edward Norton. Edward Norton would play a great Norton Sinclair / Danny.
Here's where I'm going to challenge you guys to reread through and continue reading and get up to where this book is at currently. That handlebar mustache and goatee and Daniel, they're not the same people. They're different. It's going to blow your mind when you guys realize who's who, and the current issues that are out now bring you up to speed and deliver some of those character reveals. There's connections that you guys are making that aren't quite there, that you got to pull them apart and reconnect them, and it's going to blow your guys' minds.
Okay, so there is an answer for his chin. I could get behind that. I'm excited now. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me, and I was like, okay. In this one scene when he took off his mask, he's like clean shaven, and always has that growth. Sometimes it looks like he just has like a chin beard or a neck beard going on, and I'm just like, all right, what is going on here? It's just
Not the same person.
thing. Okay.
Not the same.
Okay. I can't. Oh, wow. Okay. He just blew my mind there. All right. So let's give this one a final score if we can. So, Andy, as usual, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. This is going to be my double signed gold label 10.0 all day long. This is it.
Damn.
This is my, and I challenge people that have issues with the way it's written, or even if it's not necessarily the thing, try to take yourself out of your shoes and think about it from another perspective and reread it a couple of times. And I get it, if this genre isn't your thing, then you'll move on. But the people that have even gotten hooked a little bit, think about it from different perspectives, reread it a couple of times, understand that pacing that some people don't like is forcing you to open your mind and pay attention to details, because the details fill the voids. The details are more important sometimes than the bigger picture that you're getting delivered right there in the volume. So this is, like I said, this is gonna be transcended into a show. It's gonna be at some point, and I can't wait for that to happen. I'm sad that this story is ending, but this is my double signed gold label 10.0 all day long for me.
What about you, Drew?
9.6. 9.6 in the way that you get it back from CGC and you say, well, what the fuck's wrong with it? Right? But 9.6. It could be better in a lot of the ways that it's paced. But I would still say one of the better stories in the past decade of comics, in my opinion. I think it's a must read. I can't wait for it to be a television show. So like the normies at work and like my dad are like, hey, you seen this Gideon Falls? I'm like, yeah, fucker, I know what it's all about. He's like, oh, I wonder what's happening. Where's the twist? And I'll be like, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I don't know all the twists. I like to be a hipster about those kind of things.
You know, for me, I was ready to come in with my hot take guns ablaze, and kind of like Scott Evans. I had pretty much almost that identical reaction that Scott Evans had on the Discord server, where I was like, you know, should I give this like a 7 or a 6 or maybe even a 5 for the first volume? I was just like, ugh. And then I kept going as per your suggestion. And I think for now, I think I'm gonna give it a 9.0. Because I really have been enjoying. Obviously, it's been a while, like I said, since I have binge read something to this extent. That all being said, I really hope they can stick the landing, because some things like this I've seen in the past, especially in television. We've mentioned Lost all day. We've mentioned Twin Peaks all day, and even the X-Files. And all three of those shows have another thing in common. They all had weird endings. So they didn't have this like big, awesome ending where everything was clear and, you know, it was satisfying. It was just like, it was weird. So I really hope that whatever's going on, and by the time we're done with volume 5 and the big, huge ending, 80-page giant, whatever, I hope Jeff Lemire's plan comes to fruition, and maybe I'll even give that a bump higher overall. But right now, I think I'm just going to stick with the 9.0 because I've enjoyed the ride so far, even though it was very bumpy to start. I hope it's a great finish.
I think that we're kind of going to avoid that disappointing finish, at least in comic book form. You can't give Lost the same credit that you can give Twin Peaks and the X-Files for not being able to choose their ending.
Right.
Lemire is going to choose his ending. Sorrentino, who has been given as much a writer credit on this as a artist credit, is going to be able to choose the ending. And then they're getting to do that in an 80-page giant issue that's going to wrap everything up. I think that gives them enough real estate and enough time to really put a bow on this thing in a way that's satisfying.
Yeah, I just hope it doesn't end with Norton Sinclair bashing his head into a mirror asking, how's Annie?
Hey, it's not Penny's boat.
That's right. It's not Penny's boat. I guess the truth is out there. All right, so that's our big, huge review of pretty much all of Gideon Falls minus a few issues. Time for some plugs here. Next week, week 54 of Modern. 54 episodes coming up. This is crazy. We've got Batman The Long Halloween next week. We'll be back live October 26th, 10 p.m. Eastern, for a big grand review of Batman The Long Halloween. Hopefully we'll have a few guests on Modern Men for that as well. Definitely can't wait to read that 12-issue maxi series, The Long Halloween. And then we have a poll posted already. So you might be watching this 10 p.m. tonight. You might be watching it tomorrow, but we already have the Week 55 poll up. So the options for Week 55 of Modern Men, we always have 5 options. The first option, I think, is a pretty strong one. Spider-Verse by Dan Slott. And I know we've read 3 crises from DC, but, you know, what does maybe a Marvel-style crisis look like? And, you know, there's a lot of attention on this right now because of what's going on with Spider-Man, the movies, and maybe them recruiting 2 previous Spider-Man actors. Andy, have you had a chance to dive into the Spider-Verse?
I have not, so I'm really looking forward to this.
Crisis on Infinite Spiders is a hell of a read. It's a lot of fun. If you stay away from all the tie-ins in the periphery and you keep your eye on the prize, you won't get too bogged down with nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way I always looked at it. It was just a nice tribute to what Crisis was, but it's not as much of a headache. It's just Dan Slott having some fun before Hickman's Secret Wars, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you're going to get some Leopardon in there. So if you're not a fan of Leopardon or you don't know what that is, pick up Spider-Verse and read along.
And if you're not a fan of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, this is the book for you. Next up, Drew, tell me about Black Bolt by Slad and Ahmed.
Black Bolt is a solo Black Bolt title that has gotten a lot of love in the critical community. I think the art was really dynamic, and I stopped reading after issue 3 because I just stopped buying it. So I'd like to go back and read the whole thing. It was suggested to us by our good friend Jason Cantu, Comics Misexplained, last week in the chat, and I want to make these guys read some Inhumans. So let's vote for Black Bolt.
My horse may be sick if the Inhumans win this.
We're doing a strictly Inhuman poll at one point.
Oh, yeah, don't even want to imagine that. Next up, we got Hawkeye by Matt Fraction. I'm not giving up on Matt Fraction's Hawkeye. I think it's one of the more fun reads, especially like, who wants to read Hawkeye? That's what I thought when I bought this first issue, but I thought it had a sweet cover. But I actually read it, and it was pretty cool, so I ended up getting all of them. So I kind of hope that one wins, but it's probably not going to. But, hey, that's my personal pick, Hawkeye by Matt Fraction. Next up, what's probably going to win, maybe this can conquer the Spider-Verse, Immortal Hulk by Al Ewing. So I know this is one we've teased putting on the poll several times, and for whatever reason, it just never ends up on the poll. But this time, we said, screw it, why not? Immortal Hulk. Now, Andy, have you had a chance to read this one?
I have not. I'm really excited for this poll coming up because Immortal Hulk, when it first came out, I think some speculation on that drove some of those issues through the roof, and I was like, I backed off, decided to wait and see how that was going to end before I jumped on. So if that's what wins, I'm looking. Well, there's not a bad title on this list, in my opinion, that I want to read.
Well, issue number 3 of Immortal Hulk is one of the worst comics I've read in a very, very long time. The whole run's really great, but I think that I'll have some hot takes about that if Immortal Hulk is the winner.
Interesting. All right. Then the last one, Andy wanted some Punisher, so we gave him some Punisher. Punisher Max by Garth Ennis.
It's been a long time since I visited this, so I really need to get brushed up on this again.
Yeah, it's been on my read list for a while, so it's definitely something I kind of want to read because it says, like, I've just heard, like, if you're going to read Punisher, this is the one to read. So maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. Maybe we'll find out.
Maybe I'll create 75 different dummy accounts and vote up Black Bolt.
Oh, I know that Punisher run's got McCrae on the art, and that was a lot of fun, if I remember correctly.
So fans, definitely make sure you get out there and vote because no one wants to read Black Bolt except for Drew. Don't vote. Negate his rush.
It's critically acclaimed.
What critic?
You type it in the Google machine, brother.
We'll power on.
Hey, I've never finished it. I'm not the critic who loved
it. Andy, where can people find you?
You guys can find me here every Monday night reading some of the greatest comic books out there with some of the best people out there. And you guys can find me on my channel at ComicManAndy on Instagram and all your usual social media stuff.
What about you, Drew? Where can people find Drew Man?
Find me at DruManchu Comics on Twitter if you want to tweet at me and talk comics. I'm DruManchu on the old Instagram. DruManchu on YouTube. And if you build a time machine and you go back to before this episode was edited and after it was recorded, you can find me at the Chick-fil-A getting some dinner, getting ready to sit down and cut this thing up.
Well, you can find me, CWoodard19. Search for it on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Right now on YouTube, I got a whole bunch of videos being uploaded. We're doing October reads every day of the month of October. I don't know what I was thinking. It's 19 days in. I got to make a 20th video in a row tonight. That's a lot of work for me. I don't know what I was thinking. But
Just talk about Gideon Falls.
Gideon Falls,
recovering Gideon.
Then you got to
Falls.
give me an extra entry because I
I
suggested
already
it.
gave you an extra entry for Gideon Falls.
Give me more. Give me more.
But yeah, we're doing October reads. I don't even know what I'm going to review yet tonight. If I do Gideon Falls again, I'll probably just turn into another 2-hour video or 1-hour video, what have you. Usually you can find me on the Tuesday night live stream, 7 p.m. Easterns on the CWoodard19 YouTube channel. But I am taking this week off because I have to work. So I will not be live tomorrow night at 7 because I'll be getting ready for work. But catch me next week. I will hopefully have 2 more pieces of original art, a key issue that people definitely will love and enjoy, and just some fun books I got from J Hood Creative. He actually okayed me a few things in the package I ordered from him. So always big shout out to J Hood. He's one of the best in the community. And we'll have Baltimore Comic-Con coming up here live on the Comic Core channel starting this Thursday with a pretty huge auction hosted by the Great Legends Show. And then tune in all weekend for more coverage. Go to BaltimoreComicCon.com. Until next time, guys, we'll see you later.